All right, welcome to Cwic Show. My name is Greg Mattson, and I am your host. In this episode, I'm going to give you a little personal story, a missionary story that has a little bit of intrigue. It's a little compelling. It is kind of a fun story. When I was on my mission, toward the very end of my mission, I had maybe, and I'm going to say weeks left in my mission. I was out in an area, a rural area, that, we were out with a member family at their home. And in Mexico, the way they eat there, their schedule is they have a small to decent sized breakfast in the morning. Then they have a big meal around 2 p.m. That's the la comida, right? That's the big meal of the day. And that's why you usually have a siesta in some places, especially in the small towns, the pueblos. In those areas, they still have siestas after that because you stuff yourself at midday and then you have a siesta and then you go on with your day after that. So Mexicans are used to staying up from that tradition. They're used to staying up pretty late. And you still see that in the U.S. here oftentimes today. And so they'll stay up late. The kids will stay up late. And they eat their what we would call kind of like a dinner. For them, it's a cena. Is that they'll eat that at 8:30, 9, 10 o'clock at night sometimes. And so we're at this family's home out in this rural area, and we're eating cena with them. And so it's about, it's getting a little bit later, but I remember exactly what the meal was. We were having tostadas with crema on it, and then there was some leftover pan dulce, right, sweet breads. Very good stuff. We still eat that for Christmas morning every year in our home as a tradition. So we were eating the pan dulce and dipping it into a hot chocolate that was made by the hermana there, the sister there, as she made it and heated it up on the stove, on the stovetop. And so we ate with them and we're talking with them, and it was starting to get late and we had to be able to get back to our apartment. And so we step out, and what I'm going to do here on the video, you'll be able to see, is we step out, and if you can see in the diagram here, I'm going to try and explain it audibly as best that I can here. We were in a home here, and we walk out, right? We are walking out to the street out in front of the home, and it's late, it's dark, and on the video here, you can see there's two different sizes of missionaries. So I'm out there, I'm 6'2", and my companion at the time, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong on this, I might be wrong, but I'm gonna guess he was 5'4", 5'5", and probably about 115 pounds. And so that's why there's the discrepancy in size here on these little figures on the video here. So we walk outside. And at this time in Mexico, I was getting maybe the peso was going just sinking like crazy. I had that was back in the day when you didn't get the money from your mission, right? I would get a check from my dad, basically, and have to go to the banks and get that cash. Well, it was about $150 a month that I got. Well, out of that $150, I was able to get 300,000 pesos. I was rich. Not really, but I'd get 300,000 pesos or more at times while I was on my mission. And so what I would do oftentimes, I had a horrible bike accident early in my mission. And once that happened, I stopped with the bikes almost completely. There were a few areas where there were bikes, maybe just a couple after that. I didn't use them. I just never used them. And so it was so cheap to get a taxi, I would usually walk if possible. And if it was too far to walk, then I would just get a taxi, or what they would call a combi out there. A combi is basically, it's a VW bus that they would just stuff with people. And so we'd take the combi places really, really cheap, and a taxi if we had to. This is one of those areas where you had to use a lot of taxis because it was a little more rural. outside of the suburban area, and a lot of ground to cover. And so we were going to walk out. I walked out into the street, and I was going to go out. We were going to try and find a taxi just roaming around at night, right, so that we could get home. So as I get out into the street here with my companion, we just had gotten out to the middle of the street in front of the house, and we're right in the middle of a block, right? The house that we walk out of is in the middle of the block. Across the street from us is a vacant area, completely vacant area, just dirt. And so we hear this sound coming down from the area of the end of the street, not the end of the street, but the end of the block, right? So it was probably, I've got on the diagram here, maybe 4 houses. It was probably more like 6 to 8 houses down the road. And we couldn't figure out what it was. It was this sound that just started building up, and it was getting louder and louder. And then eventually we figured out it was people, and there was a crowd, and it was getting louder as it got closer to us, as we could figure out. So it was coming from this area over here, and all of a sudden, from around the block, as we're standing there, we see a large number, and I would guess about 40-ish young men. I would say ages 14 to 25. And they're running straight at us. And as they get closer, I notice that there are rocks in their hands, and a few of them have knives. And they're coming right at us. So again, I've got this companion with me. I don't know how much help he's going to be, and what am I going to do really, right, with 40 guys coming at me. So I carried this kind of a bag. It was almost like a soft lunchbox almost, that held my scriptures and my and a pen, and I didn't carry my passport around or visa or anything like that, but some notes and other things that I might need. Toilet paper, very important out there. I kept some toilet paper, and boy, I've got stories out there which I'm not going to tell you now. And then it had a strap on it, so I threw it over one shoulder and carried it down on the back, kind of on my back on one side. And so I took this off. Right, I took this off, and I have it holding, and I'm holding the very end of the strap, and then I'm holding the bag, or just above the bag on the strap, with my left hand. I'm left-handed, and I'm just backing up, and I kind of get out in front of my companion, and I'm ready to roll. Right, they're coming full speed at us, and there's no way we're running out of the way. I mean, turning and running isn't going to make any sense at all. Just as I do this, just as I take the bag off, I hear some noise, the exact same noise getting louder from the other side of the block behind us. And I look behind, and there are another more or less 40 young men coming right at us from the other side. And they've got most of them have rocks, and there's a few knives in their hands. And I'm thinking, okay, here we go. This is it. I've got a few weeks left in my mission. It's come to this. I've fulfilled my time on my mission, and now I'm done, right? So I just figured I'm just going all out. I'm going to go all out on this thing. They've been waiting for us to come out of this house, and once we got out, they surrounded us from both sides, and so they come at us, and as they come at us, they get right on us from both sides, and they meet almost at the same time right at us as they come in here on both sides. So all I can do, and my adrenaline is pumping as hard as you can imagine, is I take that bag and I just start swinging it, right? Oh, as they get closer to us, rocks are being thrown. And so they're already coming at us. So we're blocking, trying to block the rocks and everything. A couple of them hit me. And then of course I see closer and closer, I see a couple of them with the knives. And so I take the bag that I have with my word of God in it, my scriptures, and I start swinging it, and I just take that thing, and I'm just wham as they come in on me. And I'm just trying to take out as many guys as I can with my bag. It's a different use for the word of God here, I guess. And I'm trying to hit him in the head, and I'm trying to, I'm doing everything I can. It's mayhem. It's absolute chaos. You've got 80 guys right on you, and I'm swinging as best that I can and hitting, and I'm knocking a couple of guys down. And I'm just thinking, this is how I'm going out. This is how I'm going to go out. And after a little bit, I realize, I'm looking back at my companion every once in a while, making sure he's okay. After swinging and knocking guys down and getting hit by other guys and getting hit by the rocks and hoping I don't get a knife in my back or heart, I realize they're not after us. They're after each other. We happen to step out right at that time, finishing our cena here with the Hermana and her kids, and walking out. We walked right into the meeting place, the exact meeting place of two gangs that were going after each other. And so it was, once I realized that, because they weren't all, some guys were hitting me as I was hitting them. But as I realized this, in the adrenaline, the sea of adrenaline that's flowing, and the rocks that are flying, and everything that's going on, I kind of stop, grab my companion, and we kind of cower down a little bit, trying to protect ourselves in the middle of all this. Well, just a little bit after this, a few seconds after this, the group that is over on this end over here, on this side over here, they take off and they run. This is the second group. They run not back from where they came from, but out toward the same area, across the field a little bit, right? Out away from the fight. So they all take off. And then the other group, that was the first group that we saw, they head out and they run after the same group. They start running after them. So you've got all these guys, they leave us there, we're bruised up, scraped up a little bit, but we're fine. No knives, no cuts other than what the rocks did. And off they go. And we're just sitting there, me and my companion, thinking, holy cow, what just happened? What just went on here? And I started to gather myself a little bit, heavy breathing, trying to calm down myself with what's going on here. And in that moment, it was pretty interesting. I had zero fear of what was going on. That's not a pat on my own back. Yes, you're a young man, and there's kind of that invincible feeling that you have when you're a young man. But in addition to that, I really feel that, because there were a few different scenarios like this where it was okay one way or the other. And I don't know if it's a matter of thinking I'm going to be protected. I never felt that. Not in that way. I don't think I ever felt on my mission like I'm just going to be protected. And maybe there is, and I'm sure mission presidents and others will say you are protected, and I don't doubt that. But the feeling more, I think, if I were to try and articulate it a little bit differently, it would be I was watched over, but I was doing the right thing. I was living the right way. And so I felt like I had the companionship of the Spirit and the support of my Heavenly Father. So regardless of what was going to happen in this situation, I felt like, the fear wasn't, oh, I'm going to die in that sense. Or it was like, okay, it looks like I'm going to die. But, how do you explain that? The fear isn't the same. It's just not the same as when I would have been 2 years earlier as a teenage boy, when I would have been scared to death, right? Of not necessarily living the right way all the time, and just been in a different place in my life. So that's one principle that I think that's important. Do we live the right way every day so that we don't fear a future? And what do we need to do to feel that way? Because I don't always feel that way. It is a lot easier as a missionary if you're doing what you think you're supposed to be doing every day. But what about in civilian life? What do you do every day to make yourself feel like that? Now, as you get older, you understand there really are really bad things that happen to people, and maybe it's a different perspective, but there's something there about living right every day, and having the Lord supporting you in a certain way. Now, a continuation of this story, very interesting. After those two gangs had taken off, out from the side, the block area from where the first group came, this is heartbreaking. We were just gathering ourselves and barely started to walk again to the direction that we were heading originally, where we were, just heading out to toward the corner where the first group came from. Out of that same corner comes another group of people. And there's about 30 of them, maybe 25, 30 of them. They're a lot slower as they run around this corner. And as they get closer, they're not running right at us. They're running toward where those two groups of young men were running. These were their moms. And some of them couldn't run that much, and they'd run a little bit and then take a walk and then run a little bit more. And I in my mind, I'm thinking all of them were crying. They probably weren't, but a lot of them were. They had tears streaming down their face, and they're running after their sons. They're running after their boys. And they just keep going, and they go through that vacant area, through the dirt, and crying, and some of them I heard them calling out names, for their sons, and running, and so, it's tragic. It's a tragic scenario, and I don't know how many. When those two boys, those two groups of gangs ran, there wasn't anybody that was left behind laying on the ground dead or anything. I'm sure there were a lot of wounded people. I saw blood. But there wasn't anybody laying on the ground. Well, I need to take that back. There were people on the ground, but they all got up, right? They all got up. But here's the thing that is what's the problem here? What is the scenario that we get from this? What is that third group of people, the moms coming around here? What does that teach us about things? It's kind of the what's missing here? What's missing, and what might explain some of this? The fathers. There was not one single man in that group anywhere at any time. And we are talking about maybe 9:45 at night. And, and I just think to myself, does that explain why there are gangs going out there at that time? And the moms running by themselves, where are their fathers at this time? And I just feel like, that's such an important thing, to have your parents whenever possible. Family is essential. Whenever you can have a father and a mother in the home, it is a huge difference. And for boys and for girls, to have a father in the home that is going to be a presence there and a guide, and yes, discipline and a strong figure to some degree, at least, right? A righteous figure, possibly, hopefully. What a difference that's going to make. in probably these boys' lives. And I remember getting into the taxi eventually and going home and just trying to absorb all of this and think to myself, what? Here I am trying to help people, and bring people to the gospel. And then here was a big manifestation of a social ill that was prevalent in this area, obviously. And how things, how they need the gospel, if they'll take it, if they'll accept it, if they'll apply it in their lives, is what I kept thinking. It's not a matter of, well, wow, it'd be great if I get to the families, because in Mexico especially, and it's happening more and more other places too, right? You were teaching a woman and her kids. More than half the families that were baptized on my mission were the mom and her kids. Probably 3/4, I would say. Something like that. Yeah, I would think that's probably right. So anyway, just a kind of a fun story. It is also a tragic story, but some principles there that we can glean from something that happened. Thanks for listening.